welcome to the International Academy of Web Television's panel about directing for the web. And we're very excited to have you all here. Thank you so much for coming. If there's anyone who needs a seat, just let us know. We'll try and fit you in.
We're running out of space. Yeah.
Exactly. This morning, we have an illustrious panel with us, and also some audience members who also have done some directing. So if we run out of things to talk about, we can bring them up. But we have 5 people with us this morning. We have David Nett, who is an award-winning filmmaker. He's director, actor, writer, multi-hyphenate extraordinaire. He's done directing for his first series, Gold, the series, and he also has directed for Night of the Zombie King, and he is one of the nominees for the International Academy of Web Television's award show that's tomorrow. Next to David, we have Danny Cameron, and Danny is here from DadLabs from Austin, Texas. And he's also an award-winning filmmaker, former television director, and he's directing, editing, and shooting content for DadLabs, and they're on episode 841.
You do it in your sleep at this point.
Next to Danny, we have Tina Cesa Ward, and Tina, do you live in LA or you live in New York?
In New York.
Yeah, so Tina's here from New York. That's what I thought.
I'm like the only, I know.
She's a writer-director for the screen and the web, and she also directs for the stage. She's received more than a dozen awards for her work and has 4 nominations for tomorrow's award show for her show, Anyone But Me. And then next to Tina, we have Brett Register, who started early in the web world with his first show, The Crew, and he's worked on lots and lots of web television. He also is an award winner. He's a director, actor, writer, another multi-hyphen extraordinaire, and he has directed also Good Night's Quest, and currently works on What's Trending with Shira, Lazar, and I think you guys have a live show tomorrow that we can all go to.
That's correct.
Awesome. And
contrary to the signs, it's not David Spade. It's going to be What's Trending.
Yes.
That's awesome. And then next to Brett, we have David Van Eyssen, and he is the director for RCVR, the web series. And do you call it Receiver?
Receiver.
Yeah, Receiver. And he's previously an advertising mogul for the likes of Coca-Cola and Philips, has directed the 2004 sci-fi feature Slipstream, starring Sean Astin of Lord of the Rings, and was born and educated in London. Are you here from London? Did you fly in?
In a roundabout way, yeah, through Los Angeles.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
You live in LA now, though?
I'm sorry?
Do you live in LA now?
I do for my sins. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So he's formerly from London. So the first thing I wanted to do is go ahead and just get a quick survey of the audience, all of you, and find out how many of you have directed or are here because you work in web television. Okay. And how many of you are here because you're interested in working in web television? Or you're just...
Nobody wants to. Yeah. The money's fantastic.
It is very lucrative. And so that just gives us a little sense. And anyone here just interested in directing in general, or are you just interested in the panel? That was sort of a 2-part question that can't be answered with a hand raise.
I'm interested in directing.
And then what I'd like to do first is go down the line and let each of you say a little bit more about yourself. And right before we do that, I am going to say who I am. My name is Sandra Payne, and I have done 3 web series and have about 90 episodes up online, and are happy to have a nomination tomorrow for one of our shows, The Web Files. So anyway, I'd like each of you to go ahead and tell us a little bit more about what brought you to being directors for web television.
I'll start since I'm closest. I'm David Nett. I am an actor and a writer who moved to Los Angeles to do those things in Los Angeles, and the directing came a little bit organically out of that. I run a little theater company with a group of friends and have done for about 10 years, and started my directing there. When we moved to doing content for the web, I actually ended up, my first little bits of directing in our first series, Gold, were because I was Plan B when our director got a different gig. So it was sort of a accidental thing, and it turned out that I enjoyed it more than I thought. So I spent a lot of time trying to become a better director and learning about that both on the stage and then for video as well. So we did the whole first season of Gold. I directed about half of Gold and about a third of Night of the Zombie King, which is nominated for 5 awards at the IAWTV Awards.
Congratulations. Danny?
I answered a Craigslist ad, and I got a job at DadLabs. No, well, that's true. I did, actually. Yeah. I also answered another Craigslist ad, and I was in Sell the Web series, where I was the funny guy that, if you watch the show, you'll see what happens to me. And so I don't know, I've done this since I was 15 when I made a feature in high school, and we put it out at web. There was no web. We put it out in video stores, and so that kind of got, me started with it. And so I just, we're at episode 841, so I mean, there's a lot of DadLabs episodes out there, and I haven't done all of them, but I lost my train of thought. That's awesome. That's pretty good. You know what? I'll let it go from there. Anyway, directing's fun. It's cool. It pays the bills, and that makes me happy enough. And my wife's pregnant, and her birthday's tomorrow, and so I'm screwed for being here. Not too screwed. Dedication.
We are grateful to have you. Tina?
I started out directing for independent film, kind of grew up wanting to be a film director, and the film project of mine fell through, and so and this was back in 2007, and someone had mentioned working on the web, which seems kind of silly to me at the time, but then I started to explore it and decided I wanted to do something episodic, and so then I arrived on the web. So if anyone but me, we have 3 seasons, and we're gearing up for our series finale come the end of February. And I also directed the branded web series Bestsellers, and I also just put out a mini web series called Good People in Love.
Cool. Brett?
I like to tell stories, and there was a point at which my friends all got bored with the stories that I told. So I decided to broaden my audience, and the internet was worldwide, so I figured that was a good start. And then I just went crazy and made a whole bunch of shows, maybe too many. Now I direct a nonfiction news show. There's no good through line to get there, but that is where I'm at now.
Cool. And David?
I started directing for the web before there was a web. I think I'm the oldest person on this panel by about 73 years. The first project I worked on was called The Passenger when I came to LA, and I was beginning my career as a commercial director. And every time I had an opportunity to go to a brand and to show them something interactive or something for the web, I did, and they looked at me puzzled and asked what the web was. So I thought, well, there's no point in directing for the web, let's just direct. And so I directed a lot of different things in that period of time. And when the web was ready, I kind of came back. But I was involved in a number of different projects along the way, from BMW Films in the beginning, through Receiver, which we're doing now. But I do remember kind of anecdotally that when we did Passenger, which was a series of films designed to be released on the web with interactivity around them, you could click on the characters and find out about them, and there was all this nested information. I asked some technologists how long it would take to download, and we were on 14.4 modems. Apparently it takes 10 years. Finally we're able to do it, but it was impossible. What I was trying to do was impossible, and now it's just improbable. But we do it anyway. Yeah.
Awesome. That's great that you were sort of one of the people thinking ahead like that. So now I'd like to get to the real thing that everyone is wondering about. And what about directing for the web? What are your challenges, and what do you find to be different if you directed projects other than for the web? Is there a difference directing for other projects? And why don't you go ahead and start, David?
The primary thing that I see is because we are... Oh, sorry, other David.
No, you go. David, after you, David.
It's okay. We'll go ahead and go with it, because you...
How about I am young David and you're old David? Pull that out.
How about if I go, David Nett? Why don't you answer that question?
Young
From my-
David, go first. Yeah.
From my standpoint, I'm actually probably the same age as you. This is real. From my standpoint, it's a matter of velocity of shooting because the budgets are so small and everybody's resource constrained. So the other things that I've directed, I have very little film stuff outside of the web, but also stage. And as an actor and writer, been on a lot of film sets. The big difference that I see is just the velocity at which you have to move in the lower budget space. And that's probably the same as any independent film or any low budget project. You just have to look at your resources and move much more quickly than you would probably like to.
Right. Yeah, I mean, for me, I've shot commercials which took 2 to 3 days to shoot for 60 seconds. But the pace at which you shot the commercials was extremely fast. People don't realize how many shots you have to gather. That was incredibly good training for me as somebody who would have to work within a budget later on down the line. And even when I did feature film, we were shooting the feature in 20 days with many setups every day. And for me, it's a very simple process. I do more setups, fewer takes. So what you result in is what appears to be better quality because you have all these different angles. But essentially, your actors work their way through the process of coming to terms with who their characters are and what the scene means over a period of time. So they're still doing lots of takes. We're just moving around them. And that actually was a technique that helped me move and achieve the velocity, in your word, David,
Cool.
quite rapidly.
Awesome. And Brett, what about you?
Well, for me, directing is, like I said, telling a story, and it's telling a story with a camera. And to me, that's the same whether you're doing web or music videos or whatever. You have to achieve your story. For me, the stories are different on the web. You have to find a way to. I mean, it keeps changing, but for me, coming up, it was always trying to find the most concise way to tell a story, and then, find an episodic way to string a narrative, but make it exciting at the end of each 2 minutes or whatever the online audience can digest. But like you, I also do very few takes, and I let the actors know ahead of time. So some actors love it, and some actors hate it, but I tell them, I'm like, you have at most 3 takes. Because otherwise, they'll spend all day getting there. They're actors, they want, you're multi-hyphenate.
You giggle all the time.
You want to try like 400 different ways, and
I'm such a giggler.
so because of the speed and with which you go, I do a lot of, if I can, sometimes it doesn't happen. We try to do rehearsals to get where we need to go, and then, like I said, I give them very small windows to get that right. On Good Night's Quest, when we were on the top of the mountain, it was sometimes 1 take maximum, which was awesome and caused actresses to cry, but whatever, it's over. But yeah, for me, like, directing is directing. You're, in charge. It's same thing as writing a novel. It's just a different way of doing it. So to me, it kind of all folds into the same. But you have to find a way to do it for less money usually,
Yeah.
and maybe no money. So.
Cool. Tina, what about you? You have definitely done directing for different mediums, so.
Yeah, I agree with all. Directing is, your directing is directing in a lot of ways. I think when I first got into doing the web, I had kind of this notion that it's going to be seen like this, so I can't do a lot of wide shots because nobody would be able to see it. And I also came from film, so I had to kind of adjust to being a little bit more of a television director, so I kind of have an amalgamation of cinema and television, which seemed the right thing to do for episodic. But I've now gone into wider shots because I think that's okay, because people see them full screen now. Other than that, I just think it's all about budget, and I also rehearse a lot beforehand as much as I can, and I do fewer takes, but I also kind of feel like some actors get it like that, and some actors get it on the 3rd one, and I don't want to take that away from them. So I actually adjust more in my shot selection. So when I shoot, I actually just shoot as an editor and not do this shot, this shot, this shot. I know exactly how it's going to come out and look, just so that I have, that the actors have their time they need to get it done, because it's really, in the end, a lot about them. So yeah, that's all I have.
Cool. What about you, Danny?
I'm gonna agree with David, but I can agree with you too, but I'm going with his. Because I for about I still do it now. I make a lot of television commercials for state and regional stuff, and so commercials, they're only 30 seconds or a minute, and so it's funny because the web, and you watch any web show, or this is all fiction and nonfiction. The one thing that people want to do is they want to watch something that entices them, and from a director's standpoint, regardless of before you shoot, what are you shooting that will entice someone to watch? And that's pretty much a commercial. I mean, every 30. I mean, this is just what I believe on a web show, especially, is people get so bored quickly, and so it's kind of like every 30 seconds something's got to happen, and so it's like, and so as a director you kind of have to think about like, well, what's this 30 seconds or a minute going to look like from a show standpoint? Okay, let's do this, let's have this happen. I mean, I just only have to, with DadLabs, I only have to deal with 2 guys that are hosts for the show, and then but that kind of gets kind of hard after a while, because how many times can these 2 guys do something in a show? So I have I don't really have much freedom with what, like, an episode's about like finding the best pacifier, or like how to breastfeed, so that was good. And that's the thing, is sometimes, and it's funny because like what I've learned is, like, with DadLabs, you learn your audience kind of quickly, and then you go, the stuff that you're going to spend the most amount of time on, they're not going to care about. But like something so easy is like suddenly like, oh well, it's because the web is so, for nonfiction based, so much how to. And so I just kind of look at like, well, people just want to see A, B, and C, A plus B plus C equals D. And that's kind of how I usually direct them. Like, okay, people want to see a progression and then a resolution. And so I have to think of it all the time as like, what am I shooting? What am I getting to at the end product? So people will be enticed to watch it. Hope that made sense.
And also I think something important to talk about is the ghettoization of the web, and how we have perceived for so long that anybody creating for a medium like the internet cannot be creating something at an equivalent quality to all the other media. And in fact, of course, it's absolutely not true.
Yeah.
People privilege long form. They say, well, long form is it. That's where it's at. It's theatrical. But theatrical is not long form. TV is long form. TV is 20 times, 40 times, 100 times more long form than a feature film. So the question then becomes, what's the unit for each of these different platforms? Should internet mirror television? Should it reflect back, our aesthetics of film? And the answer is it's its own thing. And as we all direct for different media, I think the key is, what is the unit that we are directing for, and how do you conform, or how do you expand that unit into something that's really compelling? And I think we all know that because the internet has sort of been driven by utility and usage and information, there's been this desire to create something that's short burst, high value, viral content. And I think that's probably going to be a hallmark of the web for a long time to come. I don't think we need to make 80 hours of content that you sit down and watch for 1 hour at a time on the web. I don't think it's a requirement of our audience, and I don't think that we should feel that we're not delivering the best possible product because we're not doing that. We're making the best possible product for the medium in which we're creating, and I think that's the key.
And I think too, when you look at that, the kind of short burst idea, and the people who will get up on a stage or talk to younger directors or people starting out about how long your content should be, it's almost never people who are creating. It's almost never writers or directors or anybody like that. It's executives at YouTube, or somebody who runs wants to do mobile for the web and wants to monetize it. Those are the people who are telling us the shape of the thing that we should make. It really needs to be about the story, what serves that story best, what serves your target audience best. A lot of us are making niche content that couldn't find investment, outside of this sort of open, Wild West world. What is your audience willing to tolerate? What do they want to see? And that should be, from a creative standpoint, what's driving stuff. The people who are telling us only 3 minutes, or it used to be only 2 minutes, then only 3 minutes, now they're saying maybe we can have 10 minutes or whatever. They're not creative people. They're people who are trying to figure out how many ads can I drop in that thing, and that's why it's optimal. It means we still have to be able to find ways to finance ourselves, and we may have to conform to some of that stuff depending upon who's funding our projects or who's buying it from us in the back end. But so we need to be conscious of it. But creative people will almost always be pushing the limits, I think, of that in either direction, because we're not the ones setting those boundaries. We're having to react to them.
And the truth is, nobody knows. So we might as well say what we think it should be.
Yeah, right. I like that. That's a good point. Well, what do you guys think, what do you wish you'd known before you began in web content? What do you wish you'd known? And this time we'll start with Tina.
I don't know. I get that question a lot, and it's always really hard to answer because I feel like, learning as you go is, essential, and I don't feel like we've made any wrong moves. But I think with doing a web series, even aside from directing and writing it, is that I had no idea the marketing that would go into doing this and how you have to kind of push your project 24/7 and all of that. So that was a big an eye-opener for me. But otherwise, I just approached it because I came from independent film, so I just approached it the same way, which was you're making something with, very little resources, and you just have to get it done. And that's, pretty much how I approached it and still approach it. I mean, everything's so budget-driven. Our script, the how many pages we have in our script, how many shooting days I have, everything is driven by budget, and you just have to adjust and do the best for it.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
The one thing that I think about a lot, because whenever you're on a panel like this, that's always a question that's asked too, is I wish that I hadn't been as afraid of it as I was. When we were getting ready to do the first season of Gold, I was coming at it because I was an actor and a writer primarily, and I spent a lot of time on film sets and television sets, but as an actor, I was really kind of terrified of the process of making the whole thing, despite the fact that we've been running a theater company for 8 years at that point and put up lots of original plays. And so I spent like a year talking to people who I thought were going to help me make it to see if it was the right thing to do, instead of doing it. And I think I lost sort of a year of my development in that process. And not that it's an easy thing to do, it certainly is not. There's an enormous amount of work. It's really hard to tell your story right the first time out. I'm enormously proud of my first series, but it's not the same. It's not as good as my subsequent stuff. But I wish I hadn't been so afraid to start. I mean, starting is much better than dreaming about it and not doing it.
So do you guys think, what do you think the state of the current web is for bringing new content in, for new people who are coming in? If someone isn't going to be afraid to jump in, where do they fit in the process?
It has to be the best time in the history of this medium for people to be doing these things. I mean, I can tell you as somebody who started web, I was laughed out of the room to a place where people were spending significant amounts of money to produce stuff that I would take them. I mean, that's a decade of humiliation, but it was worth every moment because now the door is wide open. And what we have is we have access to the largest audience in the world. We don't have a fraction of the entertainment market. The entertainment market is actually contained within interactive media, online media, digital transmission. I mean, everything else is a subset of that. So we're in an incredibly leading position, and I think, over the next 2, 3, 4 years, you're going to see fantastic artists emerge from this medium, because now there's a structure, financial, economic structure. There's an audience sitting on the end of it that's growing every single day, and there are more devices on which to see what we create. So my guess is the best time of all, and anybody who, is watching or considering doing this, I would do this before I jump into doing television or film or anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the place where it's happening.
Yeah, I agree. I think I feel like this time is very reminiscent of the early 90s for independent film, where it became very in vogue to do an independent film where everybody was like, oh, you have an independent film, we don't care what it is, let's take it. And I feel like now is that time, and then in the 90s, as the 90s went along, the doors kind of closed on independent filmmakers, and now it's incredibly hard because then you have all the studios making their independent films. So I feel like the web is the same way right now, and I feel like everybody that wants to do it really needs to get in on it before the doors close, because this is your time. This is your time to, to show what you can do and start to stand out in the medium, because sooner or later everybody's going to come knocking and the doors are going to close, and then we already are seeing it, how many directors are coming to the web every day, film directors and television directors. So it's a important time to definitely get in and start working in this medium before it gets to be really too hard for any of us to do it, because they'll start closing the doors on us.
And the problems that you're going to find when you start creating for the web are going to be the same no matter where you're telling your stories, because you got to figure out how to tell your story for your audience, make it compelling for them. And then on the other side of it, you got to figure out how to find your audience. As independent, whether we're filmmakers making for the web or for more traditional media, you don't have a network necessarily or somebody finding your audience for you. You've got to find that audience. The problem is going to be the same wherever you go, whether you're on the web or not. So now is the time to come in and learn while there aren't as many gatekeepers as there are in other places. Again, you should always still be doing the best stuff that you can, and it's enormously hard, but there's an opportunity now that it's just, like you guys said, it's an enormous opportunity. Discovery remains our enemy. For independent content, discovery is always the enemy, especially on the web, where the amount of things that are fighting for your brain space is just an unlimited supply. But it's a problem that you have to solve in any marketplace. Whether if you're making an independent film and you don't have big national distribution, you're still doing the same fight. You're trying to get people to come to your film instead of the summer blockbuster, and so the problems are the same. This is a good place to try to learn whether you've got the tools and the willpower to stick and try to figure it out.
I will say that I will totally agree, and do not make an independent feature film. Just don't do it.
Exactly.
Don't do it. I did it. I didn't waste a lot of money, and we have our film. It's done, and it's great. And I've been trying to shop it to distributors, and they like it. Everything's great, but the problem of it is that when you can get a movie with Eric Roberts, why would you look at our movie?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, Eric Roberts is going to draw in 50,000 people. Oh man, Eric Roberts. Quick, let's go see that movie. But that's how distributors think.
Yeah.
They only think of the same thing that they've been doing forever, and it's a way. And we sent the movie out to different directors and everything, and it's just funny to hear people like Kevin Smith going like, "Dude, I would never make a Clerks now. Like, if you make Clerks now, you would fail."
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the way it is. So, all the projects that I'm going to do next I've got a lot of ideas for fictional web shows or fiction. It's like, oh, this would be a great movie. Screw that. Web series. Because I know I can control my content. I can control what I want to watch. I don't have to I can listen to people, but I don't have to deal with, I don't have to deal with the same old model of the distribution model of going, oh, I won't be able to get it to DVD and all this other stuff. Forget it. It's just, don't spend your money on it. It's a waste.
And you have such a bigger audience too. You have a film and you take it around in the film circuit. What are you getting? Maybe 100 people, maybe, if you're lucky, in that one screening. I mean, after I just released Good People Love It, I made it very cinematic, and I wanted to kind of get back to my roots with that, and I decided, well, I don't know how this is going to fly on the web, but I'm going to do it. And it just occurred to me that in 2 days, I'm like, wow, 20,000 views, I would not have that in years on the circuit if I took it. And that's what's amazing. I mean, it's all in the end about trying to get people to watch what you're making, and the web gives you such a great opportunity to do that.
That's very cool.
I think the one last thing is, you don't need to reach everybody. You only need to reach the people who are interested in what you do. And if there are 1 billion people online consuming what we make, we only need 4 or 5 million people to make it really profitable. And those are numbers that the rest of the entertainment industry can't really deal with. I mean, even cable does 4 or 5 million for the top show in the United States. I mean, we can do that on the web.
Yeah.
And Receiver did that. And there was no publicity, there was nothing, and the costs were fractional. Even, more than a lot of web shows, but less than every television show. So what's going to happen? Everyone's going to start coming towards this. And so you're right, before the gatekeepers arrive and before all these people settle in and there's an executive class, we need to work, we need to produce stuff, because 5 years, 10 years from now, it's going to be as restrictive, probably. And we'll have to invent something else.
That's a great point. Well, and I just want to quickly just get a little bit of directing about nonfiction shows from Brett and Danny. Is there any difference between directing for fiction versus nonfiction, and what are your thoughts about how you adjust for that?
Well, our show is live, which adds a whole another layer of, I was gonna say shit, but I decided not to cuss.
Good call.
Yeah, it's a clean
like,
show.
I mean, it's two totally completely different things.
Sorry.
No, I think that made what I was saying feel better.
Oh, good.
It's live.
No, I mean, it's totally, it's like that. They're both, I was gonna say, live is terrifying, but gratifying on a level that, starting, you're like, 45 minutes from now, I'm going to be done with this. It's gonna be done. Like 100%, they're gonna put it out, and then it's done. But you don't have any ability to, go back and be like, hey, can that guest not do that? Can someone block out the sun, which we have a lot of problems. But as far as like going after it, it's still kind of the same. I mean, I have I would say I have a weird method for directing, and the way that I kind of pick what I do is to go, I just constantly am like, if I was sitting in this room with these people, where would I want to watch? Like if I was sitting at the table, and I do that a lot where I just sit and don't talk and just listen to people, because I'm one of those. So it's always the same. So I thought the same thing when we were at What's Trending, and we have a studio with multiple setups and all that. But I was still like, I would probably want to be here, and here. And so the directing side of that is the same, but it gets into a whole nother mess, because I also technical direct What's Trending. Yeah, so I actually switched the show because I'm that anal and crazy. And that adds a whole nother layer of fun stuff. It adds less people to blame when stuff goes wrong, that's for sure. But I mean, I prefer scripted if I have to pick one. Is there a question? Okay. I prefer scripted because I'm a perfectionist, so it bugs me when things aren't right, and nonfiction doesn't give me that ability. But it's more fun because it challenges my perfectionism. Like, we'll have an amazing show, and I will have missed up one lower third pull, and I'll be pissed the rest of the day. So
I understand
that's the big difference for me.
Yeah. What about you, Danny?
It's kind of the same as fiction, but it's a whole other different kind of, it's a whole other different kind of style, I guess. I always approach it as sort of because everything I did before then has always been fiction, so I kind of still structure it in the same way. So there's still a story to tell in nonfiction. I mean, some of them, yes. Some of them is, if it's like I said, it's just a how-to. It's just getting the information out there. But some of the times I kind of, we don't have to deal with them crying for a scene. That's a good thing. I don't have to go like, this is your really big moment. Think about it. Your kitten's dead. I don't have to go into that as much. So they just have to be fun. And I guess the energy thing is that's really the big thing for nonfiction is you still have to have energy in fiction shows, but you don't have to always go, smile guys, energy, people are looking at you, because they're looking at the camera. I think maybe that's the thing. Fiction, you're usually not looking at the camera. You're not going there oh man, I'm so sorry. Yeah, but it's still kind of neat. It's like Ray Bradbury, Fourth Wall.
We'll teach you how to do it right. Just off camera.
Yeah, put a little ball there, like a little baby, so. Yeah, I think that's what's kind of funny about nonfiction is I'm constantly having to you kind of have to remind them hey guys, you're talking to the audience, you're right there at them. So instead of somebody off camera. So I think that's kind of the big difference is they just have to remind themselves that they're looking at you going, hey, welcome, hey, and so that kind of. But once again, some of the stuff we do is yoga for dads or whatever. So it's still kind of got to have a story around it. So it's kind of fun to play with it from a story perspective. Mm-hmm. Still, people want to watch something progress. And so, the shooting stuff's still kind of the same. It's all really much production-wise. It's all the same. It's just I just have to make sure they smile and high energy.
And business-wise, do you guys with nonfiction shows, do you guys see the same opportunities and future challenges with getting nonfiction independent content out there?
I mean, it's a magical time to have this happen in terms of, and DadLabs is lucky because, with nonfiction, it is easier to get sponsored. I mean, I will always say it is very easy to get sponsored with, we're sponsored, and, we can go to pretty much, any, baby or kids, or we're approached all the time with products and stuff, so we're given a lot of stuff, and And but the funny thing of it is once again, the people at the marketing departments in these places still don't grasp the concept of web. It's kind of amazing. I mean, there's companies that are getting it, but there's a lot of companies that go like, we want to give you $5,000. Can you tweet about this, and we'll give, and then also your giveaway will be a $10 gift card. Wow, wow, $10 gift card, awesome. People are going to totally tweet about this. It's just kind of like, look, if you want us to do something, give us something people want to hold on to, and really, I guess that's a problem, is people don't, at these big marketing companies, still haven't grasped the web yet. So they want us to do stuff, and we do it, but they don't really pay much, or they don't really give you much, and they think that you can just give them the sky, because they think, oh, web's cool. I mean, but what's funny is, in terms of right now, like I said, it's still good because Ford, that the Detroit Auto Show, Clay and Brad are the two guys at DadLabs, and basically 10% of the entire Ford's budget last year was to social media, and just to social media. Now, it's this year, it's 15% of their total budget for Ford. So every year, it's getting bigger and bigger. So companies are starting to get it.
Yeah.
It's just like it's pulling teeth.
Yeah.
But they'll get it, and it's going to explode, and people are going to go, wow, look at all those, because this is like 1910 for film. Web. This is like sort of like everybody's making a lot of shorts and web stories and and we've still got 5 to 10 years, and then all of a sudden it's going to be the 20s or 30s, and
We'll
people
get to the talkies.
Yeah, see, everybody's going to be like, wow, look at all this web stuff. Like Frankenstein on the web.
And I think David said something right away in the beginning about the ghettoization of the web, and I think that's, in this magical time, the biggest thing that we have to resist as people who are creating things is that ghettoization, that ghetto idea, that idea that we are forever going to work for free, that what we make has less value than what somebody makes just because it's being displayed in a different medium. We see it already happening a lot, and companies are expanding their budgets, but what they expect from us is not even, to be able to do stuff for half the cost of television. It's tiny fractions of it. And part of it is our own fault, because there's a lot of us out there talking very loudly about how our show costs $300,
Yes.
which Tina and I talk about all the time,
Indeed.
because it's not the actual cost of your show. It may have been the cost of the food for your shoot day, but everything else has value as well. And so part of that ghettoization is on us. We've got to make sure that we are communicating the value of what we're making, showing how it isn't different from film, it isn't different from television, and that it has value and cost, even if it's not coming out of our wallets up front necessarily. And then part of it is the companies as well. It's companies' job to try to get as much as they can for as little money as possible. So there's going to be that struggle there, but resisting ghettoization, I think, is going to be, for those of us who are already in the space and already making things, is going to be one of our hardest upcoming tasks, and hopefully we can provide some cover for people who are starting out.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reality is it's web or dead, isn't it? I mean, if these guys don't grasp that at this point, they're doomed. If they keep paying for TV commercials in this climate, brands advertising in print media and buying billboards, and they don't really exercise the power of the web, they're finished. I mean, companies are run by marketing, they're not run by product quality, let's face it. Look at Apple, did both miraculously. Not everybody does. Most people are run by marketing. And if you don't seize that opportunity. But my original background was a painter, and I learned something really valuable early on. When I would do exhibitions, collectors would come, and they would say to me, how long did that take you? I thought, this is a strange question. What does it matter? And so I used to say, well, actually, I did that one in 2 hours. And they go, oh. So I tried, answering the question slightly differently. I said, that took me 7 weeks. They went, oh. So it's actually, we're setting our own bar. We're telling people it costs nothing. So they think it has no value. And I agree, we have to stop doing that.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, it takes an enormous amount of effort and work and other people and your parents' money and everybody's, whatever it is that you needed to get started, that should be factored in. And if a studio was doing that accounting, it would say, Mum donated 3 hamburgers, $8.75, and let's add that all together. And when we finally come to say what it costs, let's be real. Let's not pretend it's for free.
And the time of our people, so our actors, our crew, everybody who works in the thing, that's all got enormous value, far more than even if we're able to pay them. And our own time has enormous value, and that's one of the things I think that gets left out of the equation most often. because we're all eager to get the things that we make out there. The amount of time that we spend also has value. And any studio that like buys a piece of web content or that adopts it, when Sci-Fi took on the Mercury Men, Chris Brexta's show, which is a great show if you've seen it, and is an enormous labor of love. It took 3 years to do the post-production because almost all of it was done by hand. And, I mean, just an enormous amount of work. Sci-Fi was the first person to put out there, this show cost some crazily, stupidly low amount. I think they said like $3,000 or something ridiculously low, because they want to advertise that, because they do the opposite of what we do. They're trying to push the number down as we're trying to communicate our value. So we've got to be there communicating.
We can also do it much more cost effectively than they can.
Absolutely.
Which is really good news. It just doesn't have to be slave labor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be 1/100th of the cost of something. It doesn't have to be, we don't have to be an industry of hobbyists forever. The reality is I haven't gotten paid for anything that we do, and a lot of what I do is come out of my pocket, but that's not my end game, obviously,
Yeah.
And we shouldn't behave like it is.
Absolutely.
But to talk about, you asked about the marketing differences. I was just going to say, because I've done both scripted and nonfiction to a certain extent, it's when you're telling a story, when you're doing a scripted show, you want to create a fictional world. You want people to be there engaged, and you don't want to take them out of that. So you don't want to. The ability to sell the brands is so much more difficult because you have to find. We sold one brand show that thankfully never aired, where we had to like really whore it up and be like, they're only going to eat this product. Like, we're not going to talk about it, but in every scene, they're for some reason going to be eating it. And it was always like, I thought it was terrible because I'm like, all I could see was the product. But with nonfiction, it's really easy to be like, you should buy Clear Dart brand cups.
Yeah.
Now, moving on to the next segment. Because
episode is
you're going, this is your world. You need a cup. Get this cup. Anyway, back to, we're going to talk about real things. And it doesn't disengage the audience, so it's so much easier to go to the brand and be like, I don't care, just cover the whole stage. Like, what do you want us to do? Do you want us to hold the tablet? Yeah. You want to hold it beside our face while we talk? Like, it doesn't really kill the show to do that. And, that's the biggest difficulty in finding financing for scripted, because this industry is a business and blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of like, because we don't have the commercial breaks, the audience doesn't have that moment where they disengage and go, okay, now I'm going to be advertised to, and then come back into the story. So there's been like pre-rolls and overlays to a certain extent, but it's kind of cracking that marketing nut within the scripted world is really what we need, and to find a good way to bring all this together. And if anybody knows what that is, I'll
Well, if you think about the
showroom D.
Folgers commercial, you remember the Folgers commercial where the guy comes home?
That's how it started, right.
That's one of the most brilliant storyline commercials ever made. And I think that, because they did in the 50s, I mean, Lucille Ball would be like smoking and doing whatever, and they'd be like, yum, this coffee's really good. And then they go back, I mean, Alias had like, quick, into the F-150.
Yeah,
Or like my
exactly.
favorite Alias episode is like, so you finally got the new Ford Hybrid. Yes, I got it because it's quiet for sneaking up on people. And I was like,
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, they've been
It is,
doing
by
it.
the way.
I mean, but there are ways
And
to
so
do
it's
it.
just
I
so
mean,
funny how long
I mean,
they've
Receiver was completely paid for by brands.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And you don't really, as an audience, you don't feel it's there.
Yeah.
In fact, you think they're squashing birds and doing all that. How can a brand possibly support that? Because the brand is looking towards the audience that's watching it and saying, how do I reach those people? Because those people are unreachable in any other medium. So I think actually it's not easy to do, but there is a way. There is a way.
What I meant to say is, I feel like because of online and because of what we have there's a better way to integrate. We should be able to go to brands and go, you get more for your money because of this.
I mean, personally, I'd like to eliminate pre-roll and post-roll and all these mimicries of television, because everyone hates it on TV, so why are they going to start liking it on the web? The one place where we thought we were actually free not to do this. Overlays, something else maybe.
Yeah, it's like I worked on, I won't go too far down this tangent, but I worked on a show where we worked with a company to build an overlay that you could click on anything you see in the show. Shirts.
Oh, cool.
And it would pull up on the side what it is and where you could get it.
That's cool.
And that show never came out. I don't even know why. People above me could probably answer that question. But I looked at that and I was like, that's genius. And then it never came out. So
Yeah. But I do think
that
that
exists. Right.
there's quite a wide range of clunky integrated brands versus elegantly done. So is that how you guys are, like, how are you funding these projects? Have you started working with brands, or is it still mom and dad?
Mom and Dad, that would be
So we're actually just getting ready to go back into production in February on a new show, and I spent a year and a half trying to find sponsors specifically for this show, and we tend to make content that kind of sits on the edge of either niche audiences for Golden Zombie King, or in this case, it's a sort of a dark romantic comedy about a woman dying of cancer. So it's a little bit of a hard sell into a brand because they're afraid. And because they're uncertain of the reward that they're going to get. It's no different from whether you're on cable television or whatever else, trying to convince somebody with money to give you money and they'll get some reward out of it. The key is going to be, as we prove that there is value, that there is engaged audience, that people are loyal to us and will support the people who sponsor us, that's going to change. Right now companies are looking a little bit for something for nothing, and they don't really understand the metric. The online advertising metric has been how many eyeballs. It's not been very valuable traditionally. The CPM numbers are super low in general, cost per 1,000 views of your banner ad or whatever. And they're still kind of looking at a lot of us like that, especially those of us who are working really independently or whose shows are smaller. But that'll change. I feel like we've got a really engaged audience in our shows. We've in our earlier shows, we've actually paid back a lot of our production costs from fans who've given us money even though they don't have to. That's a really valuable thing, and brands will eventually begin to realize that.
Yeah. Engaged fans is hugely valuable.
Engagement is very different from passive viewing, and again, it's hard to quantify, so it's hard for an accountant to decide what that value is, but we're figuring out ways to communicate that better.
And it kind of dawns on me, too, that the one big difference I see with directing for the web versus other mediums is that no matter what, you kind of can't just be the director. You sort of have to be involved in so many other aspects of the production. And do you guys find that to be true? And what parts of that frustrate you, and what parts of it do you love? David.
I think that it's fantastic to get to be the hyphenate, isn't it? Because let's face it, we're all control freaks. And the more of these roles that we can have influence over, the more we can control the outcome of our product. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what it's all about. I mean, this is not a consensus-based activity. It's an activity which is designed to allow your voice to speak directly to an audience and communicate something of value. And we all collaborate in the process of making that vision singular. It doesn't mean that we all have to check with each other about what word goes before what other word and what color this should be, and we certainly don't need a layer sitting on top of us. I mean, this was the first time in my life when I worked on Receiver where writing, producing, directing became one act. Every part of my career, I've been split off from connecting those things together because it's dangerous to connect those things. Look what we can do. We can do by ourselves, unsupervised. We don't really need to have these other people who don't know what this medium is about telling us what we should do within this medium. I think we need to be free to experiment. It needs to be a sandbox. And it will be a sandbox for the next few years. And then we'll discover there are rules, and other people come and break those rules. So for me, even the process of raising money, because all we were was a small independent show. People think Receiver had all this money. It didn't. We had a little bit of seed money that we put up and shot a pilot, and then went out and shopped it and tried to figure out, well, how could brands be part of this, or would Google be interested in this, or that was an incredibly enlightening process for us. And I think if I'd sat there just as a director, I'd be waiting for someone to finance Receiver today. Yeah. And they'd all say, well, there are other UFO shows, and it's this and it's that, and no one wants that, and who's going to spend all this money? And the truth is, a lot of people will spend this money. You just have to go find them. And I think we are now given license to be the hyphenate that we always dreamed that we could be.
I will say, because I came from independent film, that I've always been the producer, the writer, and director. So now I'm kind of the only time I really wasn't, when I directed Bestsellers, which I did write, Susan Miller wrote, and CJP produced it. now I'm coming to the point where I'm going to, like AOL and My Damn Channel and even brands to get funding for projects. And I'm actually a little nervous to have one of my hyphenates taken away, like the producer part, where now people are going to say, oh, we want this in here, we want that in there. And I'm just wondering how I'm going to actually react to having
no.
Yeah, having that so much input. I mean, I was lucky on Bestsellers. They loved everything. They gave me one editing note, and that was it. And then the rest, I was like, woo, all right, this brand thing's not so bad. I have a feeling it's not going to be like that
Actually,
for everybody.
they're really collaborative. I found them much more collaborative than studios are collaborative. They want to know how to reach their market.
Yeah.
So they're actually very flexible. The ones that I've been really fortunate.
Yeah.
Maybe there are others who are
Well,
not.
that's good to know. Guess we'll see.
There are others.
There are others.
Those other ones exist. No, I think the director hat is very impatient for me. And that's what caused us to go out and make all this stuff for no money. The producer hat, it has to be more patient. It has to stay up all hours of the night putting together proposals for brands and things like that. It's just horrible. I don't ever want to do that. I would like to be just the director.
Yeah.
The hyphenate is necessary, but
Sometimes it is nice to be just the director.
yeah, I mean that would be fine.
I think the hardest part about the hyphenate stuff for me is the long tail of all of it, right? As an actor, I got to walk on set, be brilliant as I always am on camera, and then go home and wait for it to come out and watch it and tell people to watch it because I was brilliant. But as a director producer, you have to hang on to your project for a long time after it's gone, or after it's been completed and you're in post production, and I'm managing post production as well, and then thereafter marketing it and getting eyeballs on it, and there's a long process after it's all over that I didn't expect initially, and that I'm actually finding I enjoy more than I expected to. But it's a lot of work, and in a lot of ways, that pre-production work where you're audience building, not just the regular filming pre-pro, and the post where you're trying to find your audience and convince people to help you make a second season, et cetera, or whatever the next project is, that's an enormous amount of work that sometimes I wish I had help for, but I find that I enjoy it more than I expected.
Yeah, I think on set, though, it's also tough to be both the producer and the director because, as the producer, you got to tell your DP, no, you can't do that. But as the director, you want to be like, you want to be that team. So it's hard sometimes if you're both. I've been working with the same DP for a while, and when I was on Bestsellers, it was actually fun because I wasn't the producer, so we could sit back and bitch about producers, and then leave at the end of the day and bitch about stuff, But when I work with her on Anyone But Me, it's like I was the producer, so I always felt like at some point I had to put like my foot down about things, and you're like, oh, but I don't want to be that person because I also have to work with her as the director. So I don't want to ruin that relationship that we have. So in some ways, I try to distance myself on anything that I'm producing.
You have that conversation with yourself now?
I
hate working with her.
Yes, right. It's tough in that regard.
I think you need a good line producer. But,
well, absolutely.
But
even still, if you're like the EP, you have to be the one, even with your line producer and your DP are like, no, I need that. No, you can't have it. You have to be the final word.
The question is, where does the creative act end? Does it end with us saying cut and then going into editorial and finishing this whole thing and going through a post? Or does it end when it finally reaches an audience? Between saying it's in the can and reaching an audience, all this other stuff has to happen. I'm scared of allowing that process just to unfold without my involvement. Because I know my story, I know my characters, I know how I've shot, I know why I've shot it that way. And I think I can pass that message down the line to the audience. Same with the process of raising the money. If you don't control that process, then you don't get to say when essentially you yell action and cut. Somebody else is going to supervise that. So I don't know, I feel like the whole thing is part of directing. And in fact, we shouldn't distinguish because it's the unions and the studios that have broken us up into these little pieces. Griffith did everything, right? Mm-hmm. Kubrick did everything. Or the more he could do, the better. He would go into movie theaters and check out the sound systems before he'd allow the film to be screened. That's kind of a projectionist's job, isn't it? But he would do it all. Yeah. And the Coen brothers like to cut their own trailers. And I think we should take more control of what we do and not begrudge it, because it's an incredible opportunity. In every other part of the business, they cut you off. They don't let you do it.
Yeah, it
So-
seems like you're right. I think early on, the directors had so much, even through the 60s and 70s and all the rest, we had so much control over it. It feels like now it's like you have, the directors that come in that are just like, all right, let the DP run the visuals and whatever. Where you're right, it's become a little bit more fragmented, and it would be nice to kind of get back to that auteur kind of idea of what direction is, because it is. I mean, who knows the story better than the director? The director better know every in and out of that story, and they're the producer can't come in and just say, oh, well, you should change the color of that, or you should, shoot this, or what. How do they know? They don't have the big overall view of what the story is. That's a director's job.
That's what you're getting paid for, or in our
Yes,
case, not getting
exactly.
paid for.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Well, we've come up on 1 hour's worth of this panel, and at this time, I wanted to ask one last question of you and then see if you guys have any questions. So the last question I wanted to ask of you guys is where are you guys headed with your careers? I think we've gotten some sense that you want to stay in web television. So where do you envision, say, even 10 years out?
Who's first?
David.
Who's David first? We'll start at the end.
Holographic interactive movies.
I think that sounds cool.
Do you think
I
that's
wanna see
anything
that.
different? No, I mean, I really believe that we're in an evolving medium, and that we say web television now, and I know this is the kind of inaugural event, but really, we are bigger than that. I think the fact that you can interact with the storyline, even through social experience and sharing, makes what we do very different. And I think that component is going to start to influence more the way we create. So I think gaming technology and filmmaking, they're going to come together, and I'd love to be there when that happens, because I think that's going to be, I think we're in a transitional step between linear storytelling and something completely immersive and interactive, and I would love at least to get to pay to see one of those things, if not to make one.
Cool. Brett, what about you?
We have a lot more What's Trending coming this year, and a lot of other kind of verticals from that I will be overseeing. And then we have this, I've been working on a really big web series that would have money with it. I don't want to talk about it. That's been, we've been working on it for forever, and it's one of those things that depending on the day, it might happen. Working on a movie, because there is a lot of support to that. No, I am, and it's another thing that I've been doing forever, and we have that guy that you said.
Eric Roberts.
Eric Roberts, gonna star. I know. I'm known for doing a lot of series very quickly, and like a year ago, I just decided to take a long time doing the next one, so hopefully that means it'll be good. Or it'll be much worse, and then we'll know for sure. One way or the other, we'll know.
Well, I'm developing a slew of projects for the web, and I love the web. I really do. I still want to work in film, and less so television, I think. But definitely, I still want to work in film. But I love being able to work on the web, because I like being able to put out so much work to an audience that, you start to build your audience that actually come to see your stuff, and that's pretty impressive and cool to have. So I'm continuing on, and I'm kind of exploring now the kind of more of the financial options on getting there. With Good People in Love, I did a lot of product placement that helped kind of pay for a lot of it. So I'm kind of always eager to try to figure out, how can we make this? How can we financially keep making what we want? And it be what we want, and not have to kind of conform to, on the web you can only make this, that, and the other. So I'm kind of constantly experimenting with storytelling for the web, and and just keep pushing the boundaries of it to see if it's a medium for me, which I hope it is, because it seems to be working out.
Cool. Danny?
I guess basically, we're working on a pilot for other than the nonfiction stuff. So DadLabs is doing fine. Hopefully we keep going forward. We might hopefully get a break. I won't say from who. but it's definitely a break. But for me, I guess I'm working on a pilot for a comedy show that I want to like. I think that Hulu does really well with so many people are watching shows online, and I think it'll be nice in like 5 to 10 years when people at home can watch it on their television, and so they can do it now anyway. But once that finally hits, people can just go, because that's the audience we want to reach the most. Is those are the people that are sitting on their butts watching the couch. Might as well watch this instead of another rehash of a British show that is like, hey, look, it's an American show now. But like, that was a British show, and it was way funnier then. So, and I'm really debating on because I just got another email from a distribution company last night for my film, going, well, we like it, but we really love it, but our marketing team really doesn't know what to do with it. And so I'm really just thinking about making it into like a mini-series web show, like just kind of like Anne of Green Gable in it, right to the web, and seeing what happens with it. My wife really doesn't think that's a good idea, but I don't know. I mean, it's an hour and 40 minutes. That would break down 10 minutes each. That's 14 episodes. That's not too bad. I think it would. She's just like, don't give it away for free. I'm like, it's not really giving it away for free. At least someone would watch it. And I think that's what I'm more concerned with. I think, because then we have a DVD, then you can sell the DVD if people like it.
Right.
But rather than, not being screened anywhere in the world and just having it on DVD is kind of boring. I might as well utilize the audience that that's there. And it's it's kind of a family thing. I will like to see if the audience is on the web for that, because it's sort of a lot of web shows fictionally are sci-fi oriented or drama or anything. I think it'll fit into the good like drama kind of category, like sort of. So I'm going to test it. I might as well, because man, when you make a movie and you can't get into a festival or you can't do anything because you don't have Eric Roberts.
Yeah, exactly.
It just kind of goes. What's the
Eric
point?
Roberts coming soon.
I'm going to make a movie called I Stopped Eric. No, because the web doesn't need giant stars, and that's what I kind of like about it right now. It'll change.
Yeah.
It will change, but right now, it doesn't matter.
Right.
And that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Screw these big stars. They have, I'm sorry, but like. Anyway, that's all I got.
Danny Cameron rant will be in the hallway.
Yeah, rant the wrong way. Because like the other movie, well, the company that I submitted to, this is how funny it is. The company I submitted to, they're like, the movie that they're showing the most is a movie called Snow Beast with John Schneider. Now, John Schneider's not a bad person. I don't dislike the guy. I met him once, but it's like,
Me in the face.
he's a bastard. But yeah, it's just kind of like, really, John Schneider, like Snow Beast, a movie about the crappiest looking snow beast, and that's what you're going to throw out there? And I'm like, look, our movie is, it's anybody can watch it, but go ahead. But that's the way you go. That's the way it is. So it'll be on the web, under the Western Sun.
For me, I can't not make stuff. There's nothing that's more, I think indicates that more than running a theater company in Los Angeles for a decade. My wife, Shannon, and a bunch of our friends who work on, who are our production team for the video as well as the theater stuff, we can't not make. So I'll continue to be making stuff probably for the web. It's where I live, and I really like making episodic content. We've got a show that we're starting in production in February called Alice and the Monster. That'll be our next thing. We are telling 90-minute stories, mini-series kind of story arc stuff on the web right now, so that if we don't get subsequent seasons, we can be personally satisfied with what we're putting out. So that's probably the tack that we'll take. And I'm really interested in trying to figure out the marketplace. My other life, I'm a software designer, and I came up with the beginnings of the internet and figuring out the marketplace and how to have audiences appreciate the value of what's happening, and where the money can come from in our space is really, really interesting to me. So I'm actually working with a couple of different companies right now, trying to figure out tactics for different kinds of shows and how they can, potentially get money directly from the audience or show the audience value, so that sponsors have something to cling to when you're going out to them. I'm really interested in that. So I'll be doing that alongside of the creating.
That's awesome. All right, so at this point in time, does anyone have a question for the panel? Avi?
Hey guys, thank you. And just briefly, thank you guys also for doing the rant about value. And that, because I have seen that in the whole series chat and Facebook posts, and that is something that I'm constantly yelling at people about on the indie film side too.
Once a week on Twitter, Tina and I have like a long.
I appreciate it because nothing infuriates me more than actually like this articles.
And by the way, Chris who makes Mercury Man, fantastic guy. That was not from him. I just don't want to throw Chris under the bus on this.
The question that I have for you guys is just something that sort of I've been talking about, and I'm kind of interested in if anyone else even notices this. I of course agree that directing is directing, and pretty much every decision you make other than budget is going to be determined by the story you're telling. But I did have this really weird experience watching something I did at CTW where, we obviously are cutting on, Final Cut and laptops, and, maybe if we're lucky, we've got like a 27-inch iMac, but, that is sort of what we're dealing with. And of course, most people that are watching, especially right now, are watching somewhere between, a phone and maybe that 27-inch. And then I saw it all of a sudden on the screen, and I realized I felt like everything was 5, 10, 15 frames off. I never felt that way when I watched it smaller. I still don't feel that way when I watch it smaller. But I've then gone back and watched other stuff and noticed that there seems to be something that feels different when you watch it big, when you watch it small. And I was curious if that was something you guys have noticed, have dealt with, and especially as we move to these projects being on more and more different kinds of screens, especially as something gets to conversions where like Hulu's on every TV and all that stuff. I'm just curious if you've had any experience with it and what you guys think, and if I'm just utterly crazy.
Well, when you mean like, so when you're saying like it looks great smaller?
So what I'm talking about is the pacing of the cuts.
Oh, okay.
The difference between a cut feeling like it lingers just, a few frames too long when
Right.
you're watching it on your iPad versus when you're watching it on a bigger screen. Not necessarily the overall pacing of the show, but literally like cut to cut.
I mean, the answer to me is when it's bigger, there's more to look at, so you can cut slower. When it's smaller, you can't make out all the details, so you need to cut quicker. It feels that way. I mean, it doesn't always feel that way, and you may choose to reverse and do the complete opposite, and I did that with Receiver, just chose to go in the opposite direction. But personally, I cut everything in different ways for different platforms. So I recut when we showed Receiver in a movie theater, and cut it differently.
Oh, wow.
Not completely differently,
Yeah.
but just a little
But you
differently.
adjusted it
Yeah.
for the big screen.
Yeah,
That's
we
I mean,
interesting.
when people are leaning forward, they call it the lean back, lean forward, and all that crap. But I mean, there is literally something here where you're waiting. You're like, I'm gonna watch this video for 5 seconds, and then I'm gonna go check my email again, and my Facebook, and my Twitter. And when you're sitting back, you're subconsciously acknowledging that you're gonna be sitting there for however long, 30 minutes, an hour, and you're more willing to give I mean, like, as a viewer, it's just, you can take it longer. You can take longer to build a scene that way. And that's a big struggle with creating content on the web, is that it's hard to find that balance. If you, because you don't know how anyone's going to watch it, like you're saying. I try to watch all web content on my television now, sitting on the couch. Just because, that's how I like to watch it. If I'm leaning forward, I'm so impatient just by being there and thinking of all the other stuff I have to do, that I have a hard time even watching any web shows at this point. So
It's good to know.
at the end of the day, it's like, what's that?
It's good to know.
Yeah. I mean, whew, gold. When I got that DVD, I was like, oh, it's great. I'm kidding. I thought that long before. But I did appreciate the DVD. Okay. No, I mean, it's kind of like you have to decide, you pick a lane and go, I want people to consume this on a small screen, or I want them to consume this on a large screen, and you have to add accordingly. And I think the audience will, the audience you're looking for that's going to appreciate that longer cut, is going to appreciate that longer cut, and the people that don't are going to say it's too slow.
And honestly, if your story is good, they shouldn't be thinking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would guess, and that's what I was going to say, is I guess probably you're thinking about that more than anybody. I mean, which is not, you shouldn't dismiss it just because it's primarily you thinking about it, but when we're cutting our stuff, I try to watch it on as big a screen as we can. I've got a gigantic TV, and fortunately it's digital, so you can watch what you're doing. When you've got a cut, you can watch it on the bigger screens and stuff. But ultimately, you do have to pick a place you want to be. This is the show that I want to make. This is the way I want it to feel, and be comfortable with that. And we're always going to go to our screenings and be like, oh my God, I can't believe I chose that take. There was, it's always going to happen to us. But if you should be telling the story that you want to tell, and if you have the capacity, look at it in different places as you're cutting it. when you're moving super fast like Celebrate the Web, it isn't probably possible, but in general, I try to look at stuff in as many places as I can and see, I don't want to have a glaring, horrible version in some screen, but at the same time, I'm telling a specific story with a specific reason.
Cool.
Yeah, and on that same note, I've cut things just to see how people will react. I really have. I've done enough shows at this point that I'm like, I'm just gonna leave this this shot for like 5 minutes and see if anyone's comments. So you just trial and error, basically.
Yeah, it depends on what, the story you're telling too. I certainly cut Anyone But Me different than I cut Good People in Love. So it's very, it is just about making that decision. And whenever I shoot anything, I always think about what it would look like on the big screen, because that's just where my first head was. So I don't ever kind of go into it thinking, oh, people are just going to be sitting at their computers. I'm like, well, this is what I do. This is how I tell stories. If it doesn't work on the web, then I'll go somewhere else and do it. But I'm not, that's what I know what to do, and that's what I really want to do. So I don't necessarily adjust for the web, I adjust for the project.
Cool. Well, we're actually to the end of the panel, and so I'd like to get one last soundbite from each of you, just to say any last thoughts if you have any, and also could you tell us where we can watch your series so anyone who's listening can find you and tune into some of this work that you've done. David, Nett?
All right. You can find our stuff right now at goldtheseries.com. And as far as a soundbite goes, I feel like I'm really put on the spot.
Do it for
Come
all
up with a
of us.
soundbite. Quotable.
The soundbite for our series, or the tagline for our series is actually, "This is life, roll for damage." So that's what we'll go with, for the gamers out there.
Awesome.
Cool. And Danny?
You can find our stuff at DadLabs.com. It doesn't sound like a parenting testing, like parental father testing site to see if you're the father of the kid. That's what someone did. They put up a sign that day, and some guy came in and go, "You guys do the testing to see if I'm the father?" And we're like, "Jeez, God." DadLabs.com. You can also you can look up my film, which will hopefully be a web series, UnderTheWesternSun.com. And you can see me on Sell, the web series. Watch what happens to me.
Oh, awesome.
And my soundbite is just keep rocking and rolling.
Oh, nice. Classic.
It's a comment.
Now the pressure's
Tina?
on. You can watch Anyone But Me at anyoneButMeSeries.com. It's probably easy just to go to my website, which is TinaCesaWard.com, which will have all the links to all the projects that I'm working on, and links to Anyone But Me, and also Good People in Love, and new ones coming out. Soundbite, I don't know. Swing for the fences.
That's a good one. I was really banking on you having a bad sound. I could just swing in. I like I said, I make a lot of shows. If you don't know who I am, I'm Brett Register, and you can just Google me. And Google me should be my soundbite. I'm going with that. whatstrending.com is going on live tomorrow. That's what I'm working on a lot.
Yes,
these
where
days.
can we,
Yes.
people can attend, so when
What's
and
that?
where?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Where can
open
we
to
find you?
anybody. You all have badges, so you don't have to worry about that. Do you have badges? Yeah, you guys are good. Huh? No, I'm sticking with Google me. Don't give me that look.
And David?
And you can watch Receiver on YouTube, on the Machinima channel, and I think it'll be there for a while. And Soundbite, it's better to give than to receive, but not always. I don't know.
I love that. All right, well, I wanted to say thank you to everyone who did attend this morning. I applaud you for dragging yourselves out of bed and coming and hearing, I think, a fantastic panel. And congratulations to each of you on the success that you've had, and good luck tomorrow. Thank you.